Thanks, Clemmy, and thanks a lot, Tom. People can hear me? Okay, I'm going to talk about a problem that I saw happening in London, actually, and worked out ways that I could use this environment and the great privileges that we have growing up around here to kind of try and solve that problem. As I say, grew up around here. Excuse me if I sort of fall over halfway through, I'm slightly ill, so I may cough and splutter, but I grew up at near Bath, as I'm sure lots of you do, and I went to St Lawrence School, and I had great privileges through doing that. I lived on a farm, so I spent a lot of time farming. I played a bit of rugby, I studied a little. My mother said that I would have had ADHD had I not been on a farm and had all these amazing opportunities. So I probably would have been one of the children who's living in London on Ritalin, who's sort of dumbed down, and I probably wouldn't have had the energy to come up with Jamie's Farm had I been on those drugs. But I was very, very lucky, as I'm sure lots of you are. I went off to Edinburgh University, which I can highly recommend to you. If anyone's interested in going up to Scotland University, it's absolutely amazing. It's just an amazing city to be in, and I had 4 fantastic years. It was at a time when climate change wasn't as prevalent, so I was lucky enough to earn some money in my Easter holidays and go off to Africa in the summers to do some work there. So we built a nursery school, we built some pigsties, did various construction projects, cycled across East Africa once, and did lots of fun things there. And I thought that was the direction I was heading in, so I was really excited about the world that was out there and how I could use all my privileges back here to go and change that. However, this scheme, Teach First, came up. It was a new scheme. It was set up with the idea of taking top graduates to work in the most challenging schools in London. At that point, it was just in London. And what they did was they recruited, in theory, the top 3% of graduates to go and work in these schools. And you were thrown in right at the deep end. So 6 weeks of training and then straight in at the deep end. It's now recruiting, well, in my year it was 180, it's now 1,000 teachers a year. So if any of you are interested, it's a fantastic thing to get involved in. I was sent, having grown up around here, then gone to Edinburgh, to Croydon, which is right in the south pole of London, to a very, very challenging school with 65 different nationalities. They were getting 13% of the pupils were getting 5A to Cs. 5A to C at GCSE, so you can imagine that's a pretty low level of attainment. So there's some big, big challenges going on in the school. We were the guinea pigs. It never happened before, so we weren't just hated by the pupils, we were hated by most of the teachers as well. And on my first day, a big black boy bowled into my class and said, "Fuck you!" And I said, "That's absolutely disgraceful, I'm going to report you." And he said, "Well, you don't know my name," and walked off. And he was absolutely right, so I had absolutely nothing in my power to try and engage this boy. So that was my kind of welcome. Things got a bit easier, but it was tough. And I looked at 3 big problems that I felt existed in the school and that I thought I could potentially start to change as a result of the privileges I had growing up in Bath. The first one was behaviour, which was disturbing learning in every lesson. There would be a blow up about often something quite minor, which would result in chairs being thrown and the lesson being destroyed. And sadly, very little learning going on. A lot of that was coming from low self-esteem and other issues. And as much as you said, those little bastards, they need more discipline, it wasn't really about that. It was about more nurture, it was about building self-esteem, it was about creating opportunities for achievement. And that's part of where we're going with Jamie's Farm. There was a lack of physical activity. They could fight or they could play football. And I felt that was really, really sad. As I say, I'd grown up shifting hay bales, chopping logs, playing rugby, doing lots of things outside. And those things had given me huge satisfaction because I could look at them and see the results. So I felt that the children really deserved an opportunity like that. And also, of course, they had no access to the countryside. I know of people who teach in Westminster, so kind of a mile from the River Thames often, and the children have never seen the river. These children don't go anywhere at all. They stay in their communities. Often there are 2 or 3 tower blocks in the East End attached to a school. The children walk between the school and the tower block, and that's the area that they go to and nowhere else. So they had absolutely no understanding of the beauty and the inspiring environment that we live in down here. So there was the bigger issue of the cost to society of exclusion. So if you kick a kid out of school, it costs 300,000 to society. That's the cost that they put on it in terms of criminal justice, etc. So there's a vast cost associated with someone getting to the end of the line in a school like that and being kicked out. On top of that, youth unemployment is costing us $1 billion every year. Sorry, youth crime is costing us $1 billion every year. And part of what we're doing is hopefully starting to affect that. And pupil unachievement is $18 billion a year. So the first thing I did, slightly bizarre, was I drove down to Bath. I went to the neighbouring farm and I asked to borrow 2 lambs. And I drove back up to London with all the kit to look after these lambs, which luckily is fairly basic. And as I drove through Brixton and the lambs were bleating out the window and people were kind of licking their lips, I started to think maybe this was not the best idea. And when I arrived back at school, the children initially slipped death threats to the lambs under my door as a way of getting at me, any way to get at you. And I started to think maybe this wasn't a good idea. However, within a week, the more difficult children were turning up early. Other teachers observed that there were a lot less fights in the playground because there was something to look at rather than fighting. And they started to have a bit of an effect on that school. Tragically, my father died in my second year of Teach First, so I probably would have stayed in teaching for a bit longer had he not died. But I didn't have the emotional resources to carry on teaching. I did teach for 6 months after he died, and then I felt I needed an easier ride. So what I did was I went off to work for Teach First. And I keep mentioning this Teach First, so do come and talk to me if you're interested about that, or look them up as an interesting possibility for your careers. I went to work for Teach First in recruitment. It was a pretty cushy number. I was going to Edinburgh, Durham and St Andrews universities, getting drunk and persuading students not to go into work for banks, not to go and do things like that, but to come and work for Teach First to make a difference to the lives of young people, as hopefully I had in London. But during that time, I had this kind of bubbling idea that was growing in my mind around the idea of bringing children from the inner city back to the farm where I'd grown up to feel those privileges. And so in 2006, we got together a group of 7 children from the old school. I'd been away from the school a year, but I knew lots of teachers there, and they were very keen on the idea. So we brought 7 children down to the farm, down to my mother's farm, to stay in her house. And it was a totally amazing week. We established the core principles of what Jamie's Farm still is, 750 children into what we do. We had the farming, hands-on farming with me, pretty chaotic, cows always getting out, big problems on the farm, but really basic physical hands-on farming that the kids absolutely loved in a way that I would never have imagined they'd respond to so well. We had the family, so we sat around our big table in our house every day and had the meals together. Lots of children had never sat down to a meal together before. They're given a couple of quid to go and buy chicken and chips down the road. They found it really hard at first to sit around that table and speak to people, but by the end of the week they were wanting meals to go on much longer than the adults and want to carry on sitting there and chatting and eating in that way. And then you had the therapy element. My mother is a psychotherapist with 35 years experience, and so she was really inputting in that way. She was doing one-on-one and group sessions with the kids and really working through some of the challenges that they had and talking about how they could transfer the experience back to school. So the idea wasn't come and see this lovely existence we've got down in Bath and then go back to London and long for it and feel angry and jealous. It was about come and see this, get involved, we're going to welcome you in and we're going to talk to you about the challenges you face and how you can start to affect those challenges and improve your engagement with learning, improve your relationships at school and improve the relationships with the staff that came down to see us. So after that I was busy doing my job in London. I took a 4-month sabbatical, went and cycled from Kampala to Cape Town. At that point I was thinking being an adventurer would be quite fun. However, I got malaria and was in intensive care for 2 weeks, so that kind of put pay to that. So I did 3,500 miles rather than 4,000 miles. And that ended and I came back fairly determined to really get things moving with this project. So we ran 10 pilots while I was working full-time somewhere else. So evenings were invested in it, weekends, in my holidays we would have children down. And we started to build up a base of evidence that this was really, really having an impact on the children that we were working with. I went full-time 3 years ago. Once we'd done those 10 trips, I felt it was time to really get on with this. Thought I'd have to kind of do other jobs to piece things together. Luckily, I had absolutely no time to spend any money anyway, so the fact that I wasn't earning wasn't a huge problem. And we set the project up at my mother's farm. As you can imagine, 35 groups of children through your family home with siblings who are there also becomes slightly stressful, and you You get a bit of a sore head after the week when you get shouted at for all the problems. But it was amazing. The children were loving it. It was really profound, the effects that we were having on those children. We were building a staff team. We had the office at my mum's kitchen table, and it was really, really good time, but it wasn't sustainable. So we reached a kind of crisis in 2009 where it was clear that we couldn't carry on doing it at my mum's house. And so we had to look for a property. This amazing farming box came up, and I showed the chair of the trustees round, and he said, absolutely brilliant, but you'll never get the money. And I quite enjoy being given those challenges. So I went out there and started trying to persuade people that this was a very good idea. There were some major doubters, in fact doubters around Bath. People went on a bit of a hate campaign at one point, saying that I was far too young, too inexperienced, this was never going to work, etc. But fortunately they were silenced pretty quickly, and other people stepped in and lent us the money. So we took on a huge loan to buy this place, but we've been there for 2 years and it's working really, really well. As I say, 750 children have been through the property now, and we're working with 500 students a year to re-engage them with education at the moment. In terms of the outcomes, the staff that come report that 9.8 out of 10 people are satisfied with the experience, so we're getting really good feedback and we're getting really strong relationships with schools. So one school are booking 6 trips this year because they believe it's totally essential in dealing with their more challenging kids in the school. 91% of students are reporting fewer behavioural instances as a result of coming down to see us. 90% of vulnerable students re-engage with school. So there are lots of figures, if you want to see on our website, that prove that this is really working. But it's more of the anecdotal stuff that I find quite fun and that proves that kids are kind of really getting something out of it. We had some very, very challenging boys down who caused absolute havoc, I have to confess, for the first half of the week. But they'd taken on a little pig. And during the evening, I was going around saying goodnight to the boys, and they were there sort of rowing slightly. And I said, night boys, we'll go and see Petal in the morning. And one of them said, yeah, I'd like to see my pig. And the other one goes, what the fuck are you talking about? Petal's my pig. And I thought that somehow highlighted kind of the passion and enthusiasm for farming and the ownership that they were taking. So Petal the pig always sticks with me. Another instance, in the second trip ever, which you're about to see some feedback from, the children actually killed a lamb on the second day. So I'd again had a couple of bottle-fed lambs. They're always the winner with the kids. Go and feed the lambs, kids. I didn't go into any detail about how to feed a lamb, but sent them out with a bottle. And half an hour later, they were still there with the lamb sucking on the bottle. Obviously, the milk had gone about 29 minutes before, and the lamb was blowing up gradually with air. And unfortunately, the lamb died. This was very tragic for the children. Not so tragic for me, having worked on sheep farms all my life with sort of 5,000 sheep. Very sad, but you've got to get on with it. So I said, right, we need to dig a hole, get the lamb in. No, we need a proper funeral. Okay. So I went and dug the hole with the boys. We went up to collect the sheep. I put her in the wheelbarrow. No, you've got to carry it. So there are various photos of me carrying the sheep. And if you look closely, hanging around its neck is a very large bling necklace with a very large gold heart on it, because they said that she must go to the grave with a necklace for some reason. So we put Fluffy the sheep in the hole, and we said the Lord's Prayer, and we covered her over, and there were tears, and it was again one of those things that kind of sticks with you. I'm going to finish with something that sounds a little bit cheesy, but it's sort of still amazing to me that this really happened. So I got an email the other day from a boy who'd been down in the early days, and it kind of highlighted to me and the staff team why we're still doing what we're doing when there are some very, very tricky and tough moments. It just said, hello Jamie, you may not remember me, but I visited your farm way back in 2009, the school that rode the pigs. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity that you've given me. If I had not gone on the farm, I know I wouldn't have been in the position I'm in today. It literally changed my whole school career. You showed me a new look at life and helped me reflect on myself, my family, and my school. Without your farm, I wouldn't be able to get my 8+ A star and C grades, as I'm expected. Once again, thank you, Ryan. So for us, it's that kind of thing that's really keeping us going, along with all the figures. So I'm going to show you some feedback from the children to finish. This is the second ever group. These were the guys involved with Fluffy the sheep, and hopefully this will give you a bit of a flavour of the kind of kids that we're working with and what they're saying about what we do.
Last night, camped out in a tent It wasn't the best of experiences, but it was alright, so like I can say I've been in a tent before.
The pillow I had was a rock poking through the tent, and I had rocks on my back as well, like, and then I had a rough night. I mean, that's all sums up at the rough night.
There should be 39 sheep.
Yeah, I see it.
So what we need to do is you don't want to push them too fast. You just want to walk behind them gently and make a little bit of noise so that they come towards us. Don't go running at them, because what will happen is they'll run past you and go back up the field.
Come again, what do we have to do?
So we're going to fan out. We're going to get a fan of people. So I'm going to take you up there and we're going to spread out and we're going to bring them all the way through this gate, because we've got to get them down into the yard. Yeah?
Being in the country, you don't have to watch your back. You don't have to do nothing. I could sleep out here. I don't have to worry about getting shot or stabbed or anything like that, or robbed. In here, everything's just jiggy. Like I could just relax. I can play with the pigs or something, or with the horses. I can just relax. Like there's no stress. Like the chips off my shoulder, I'm okay. Like my attitude's better as well.
They're so, like I'm saying, they make us feel so at home, the people do. Like, feel really comfy, and like we're not scared to sit down or go in the kitchen and get a drink. It's just so relaxing. And like they speak to you like they put you in part of everything, like your family sort of thing. It's good.
There's not a time where I've been bored, so it's exciting and it's fun.
Here you can sit on the grass and think about everything. Everything, all your troubles, all your worries, you could just sit there and think.
It's just calmful around here. So I ain't heard no sirens, which is weird.
When I go home, I am really going to change my attitude with my mother and all these people that I'm rude to, like my mum, my dad, my little sister, my brother. Just my attitude's going to completely change them. Like, I know that. I'm just going to try and grow up a bit more.
Before, I'd just say something without thinking. Now, I'll stop and I'll think before I act. Or if I'm going to get angry or agitated, I'll just walk out the room or I'll bite my tongue.
Jamie, sadly we've got a bit less time than we thought, but it's amazing, right?
Thank you very much.